Sidhu Moosewala earning the crown as one of the greatest Punjabi rap stars to do it in a very short space of time. He was by no means the first or only artist to occupy this space. Karan Aujla is a Canadian Punjabi artist who, just like Sidhu, saw a meteoric rise to the top of the music scene in the late 2010s. Granted, Karan Aujla had a head start on Sidhu in the music game, releasing his debut single Cell Phone back in 2014, but it wasn't until around 2018-19 that he was reaching the same heights as Sidhu. Jaskaran Singh Karan Aujla was originally from the Gurala village in the Ludhiana district of Punjab. Ludhiana is one of the most populous and largest cities in Punjab, which meant that Karan's upbringing was a lot different from Sidhu's. Famous for its apparel industry, Ludhiana has sometimes been called the Manchester of India, because in the UK, Manchester is kind of England's next largest city after London, and it's been known for centuries for its cotton and clothing production. So Ludhiana is basically the fabric hotspot of Punjab, famous for its huge collections of fabrics, woolens, hosiery, even the textiles equipment that are exported to various other parts of the country. So think about the contrast between these two guys. Sidhu is from a small village. Musa is known for being a salt of the earth, tractor driving street kid, or Jat, whereas Karan actually grew up in the city, surrounded by more people and fashion. It's a completely different world, but just like Sidhu, Karan had an early interest in music, especially lyricism, and he would get his start ghostwriting for other established artists. After starting his career as a lyricist for Jasai Gill's song Range. As well as Gill, he was a ghostwriter for Mangat, Garan Kokri, and many other prominent artists in this space. However, again, just like Sidhu, after initial success and seeing his songwriting lead to hits, he would become a solo star in his own right, and his 2016 debut song, Property of Punjab, put him on the map musically. The video itself had some similar motifs to Sidhu's, like a tractor working in a field at the start of the video, but Karan walks from that tractor straight to a mansion surrounded by supercars, which kind of goes to show you, even from his debut song, he wanted to present the image of moving away from the fields of the working class to the flashy life of cars and mansions, kind of the opposite of what Sidhu Moosewala was trying to do, staying in touch with his working class roots and identifying proudly as a Jat. From here, Karan Aujla would build up an incredible buzz in the Punjabi music scene, releasing track after track on an impeccable run that put him on the map very much in the same way as Sidhu when he started his career. Karan would drop tracks like the female-focused Yarian Shafiq, as well as a song called Unity, which also came with a West Coast hip-hop inspired video actually filmed in the hood of LA's Inglewood. From there, he dropped the party track Alcohol 2, a sequel to another collab he'd done called Alcohol, and Lafafe, the latter of which was reportedly a diss track aimed directly at Sidhu Moosewala. This song would come out in March 2018, but it turned out that their beef had apparently started behind the scenes back in 2017. The pair were apparently cordial together until sometime in 2017, a leaked video of Sidhu threatening Aujla would cause tensions between them to rise. According to Ellie Mangat, an artist whom both collaborated with, a video was leaked to Karan's management where Sidhu had been dissing Karan. This apparently caused back and forth violent threats between the two, and around this time, Karan released a new song called Up and Down, which he wrote for an artist called Deep Jandu. And the song included several lines which could be interpreted as disses towards Sidhu, hinting at being betrayed by a loser former friend and calling out somebody for acting like a lion but really being a snake. At this point, these were just little behind the scenes jabs, which music fans wouldn't have likely picked up on, but that would all change when Karan Aujla decided to drop his song Lafafe on the 15th of March 2018, a track which today sits around 30 million views and was the first public escalation in this beef. Lafafe translate to envelopes or polybags, a reference to somebody giving bribes to get ahead, with this potentially being a sneak diss at Sidhu, suggesting that he actually paid to get ahead in the music industry, portraying him as some kind of industry plant, as well perhaps a way of dragging Sidhu's supposed future ambitions in politics by kind of labeling him as corrupt, with the hook of the song basically saying that they will burn the envelopes that Sidhu used to get ahead. But things would go much deeper than just the title, as many lyrics on the track appeared to take subliminal shots at Sidhu directly. The song begins with a sample of Sidhu singing the lyrics of Sanam Bular, the other artist featured on this diss track, so kind of calling Sidhu a fan, with Sanam Bular then dissing Sidhu, calling him a fake gangbanger, as well as mentioning people imitating Tupac, who famously was indeed one of Sidhu's biggest influences, as he would claim that he would beat the Tupac imitators with hockey sticks. He would then lean into the tough guy persona on this track, rapping about having goons in his crew and saying that half of his friends are in jail and the rest are on the run. Karan Aujla then begins his verse, taking shots at Sidhu, calling him a fake gangster who looks up the names of guns for his songs on Google. He would call out his haters and say that his ops envy him and he loves making them mad. Now, this track was a major provocation, and at this point, the beef was publicly frying. When Lafafe dropped in March 2018, Sidhu was still on an impeccable run of dropping music, so he wouldn't officially respond to the track for a few months until after he released his latest hit song, Dark Love, in July 2018. But then, later that same month, after dropping that mainstream hit, Sidhu would get on Demon Time and prepare his response to Karan Aujla. He would then unofficially drop his response, Warning Shots, on the 20th of July 2018. The song features a frequent collaborator of Sidhu's, Sonny Moulton, and on the track, Sidhu directly responds to Lafafe and says that he actually made it to the top off the back of his hard work, rather than through envelopes or polybags that were mentioned on the diss song. He would then claim that Karan Aujla makes music only when he's smoking weed, and that the weed has ruined his ability to see that Sidhu is clearly better at rapping. Sidhu then references the leaks that surfaced online that caused this beef, saying that his unreleased leaks are better than Karan's official drops. Sonny Moulton then takes shots at Karan Aujla on his verse, questioning his street credibility and saying that he's not about that life. He then invites Karan to Brampton in Canada to show him a real gang block where they actually kill people. He'd even threatened to shoot, rapping that his gun loves smoking and that he wants to take it to Amsterdam. Sonny then rebuts the lyrics that were mocking Sidhu for being inspired by Tupac, saying that his ops are fans and they plan to ride on their ops just like Tupac did on Hit 'Em Up. Sidhu then directly mocks Karan Aujla and Sanam Bulla by referring to the music video for Lafafe, mentioning the scene where they show them beating up a group of men with hockey sticks, with Sidhu claiming to have made the guys in the videos with the sticks move with just one phone call, perhaps hinting that he can make a call and have real demons with hockey sticks pull up, or he might be saying that he called those specific people after seeing them in the video and pressed them. Next, Sidhu denies learning about guns that he raps about from the internet, saying that he always stays armed, and claiming that he has the heart to shoot and get shot at. Something that's eerily prophetic, as it was reported that Sidhu was actually the only man to shoot back at his attackers on the day that he was killed. Then Sidhu references the Up and Down song that Aujla wrote, saying that this song is a direct response, and that's followed by Sidhu claiming that he will check anybody who disses him. Now, this track was a major response and set the Indian music scene on fire. Fans would comment how this beat had catapulted both artists at the time and sparked far more interest in the Punjabi music scene than ever before. For now, other than threats sent back and forth between camps, this beef stayed primarily in music. However, it did create a large divide between both fan bases and caused a lot of fans to pick a side. Many discussions over who was the better artist would take place after this beef popped off publicly, with most people clearly choosing Sidhu Moosewala as the better artist and the winner of the beef. But at this point, these two artists were huge in the scene. Essentially, this beef would be like the current Kendrick Lamar versus Drake beef, but for the Punjabi scene. And naturally, this brought a whole lot of extra clout and attention to both artists. And Sidhu's next move off the momentum of this beef was about to be huge, because on the 18th of October 2018, Sidhu Moosewala released his first full-length album, PBX1, and he did it with the support of T-Series, India's biggest music label, and at one time PewDiePie's biggest op. Now, the cover art of PBX1 perfectly encapsulated Sidhu's unique style. He'd be crouching on the front cover, rocking his turban but with Western clothes in front of an American lowrider. This was the quintessential gangster rap for a Punjabi audience, and a completely unique and authentic look at the modern-day globalized Indian youth culture. Now, the production on this tape is much more focused on the American trap-style drums that match Sidhu's aggressive singing and lyrical content, but it still maintains that authentic Punjabi culture in the vocals and the melodies that make the project feel completely unique and fresh if you normally listen to Western gangster rap. Now, the project PBX1 resonated with Indians all over the world and was a huge success, with this generally being considered a classic album in the Punjabi rap world. It hit #1 on iTunes for Indian pop music, and it hit number 66 on Billboard's Canadian albums chart. This project went down as one of the great Punjabi projects and arguably is Sidhu's best work. At this point, he was cemented as a megastar in the Punjabi and especially Sikh communities. He was beloved in India and by Indians around the world, and he would even begin to tour internationally off the back of So High and PBX1's success. But it wasn't just Sidhu capitalizing on the momentum of this beef. That same month, Karan Aujla would begin dropping a string of hit songs that really saw him break into the next level of the Punjabi music scene. In October of 2018, just 2 days after PBX1 released, Karan Aujla dropped Don't Worry, which today has over 180 million views on YouTube. A track where he continued to lean into the gangster image that he'd been cultivating in his back and forths with Sidhu. And in the lyrics, he would hint towards using guns and threatening to kill anyone who looks at his girl. There'd even be a verse from a woman kind of playing the role of his girl, where she sings about being scared to tell him about her problems because he squeezes people like lemons. This kind of gangster love track sort of painted Karan Aujla as sort of the Ja Rule to Sidhu Moosewala's 50 Cent, with Sidhu kind of presenting the more authentic gangster image and sound in his music. And Karan Aujla would follow up with another hit song in February 2019 called Don't Look, which now has over 170 million views on YouTube. Another track where he got tough on the mic, rapping about catching bodies and people dying after going up against them, as well as there being hits on him. The track also had an American-themed music video with plenty of lowriders bouncing through the scene, and the beat even had a little G-funk vibe to it, but overall was sounding a lot more dated than Moosewala's modern rap-inspired Punjabi anthems. But elsewhere on the song, Karan would hint towards his beef with Sidhu, rapping about not getting along with artists. But he too was on a legendary run that would continue until the end of 2019, with his next hit dropping on the 3rd of December, Cheetah Kurta, which translates to white tunic, a traditional ethnic clothing of Punjab, which Sidhu too can be often seen wearing. Now, this song has almost 300 million views, and even some of the biggest rappers in the West struggle to get these kind of numbers. And to this day, it's rare to see a Karan Aujla track that doesn't explode internationally, and his most recent song, Nothing Last, managed to rack up 20 million views in just its first month. Sidhu had already gone on the run of a lifetime and cemented himself as a pioneering legend of Punjabi rap. But off the back of the beef with Sidhu in the year that followed, in many ways, Karan Aujla kind of caught up with him, cementing his own legacy with a string of hits garnering hundreds of millions of views. And despite the animosity animosity between them, the beef had actually done wonders for their careers and images. However, in 2019, it would be a huge year for Sidhu too, but for reasons more than just music. Because just like Tupac Shakur, who he'd modeled himself on, Sidhu had ambitions beyond rap. With a revolutionary spirit and hundreds of millions of followers watching his every move, Sidhu would soon hatch a plan to try and create an impact that was much bigger than music. And so in 2019, Sidhu Moosewala decided to make his rap lyrics much more political, casting his eye to the world of politics as he started using his music as a plan to get into the halls of power and try and make changes in his country and community. But the only problem is, not everyone would be happy about this hotshot celebrity rapper getting political. Unfortunately for Sidhu Moosewala, getting into politics and dissing the government meant he would soon attract the attention of the most powerful people in the country, who weren't about to let a young upstart seize control of the culture. Before you knew it, Sidhu would be going to war with the politicians and fighting a battle that might be impossible to win. Off the back of a string of hit songs, Sidhu Moosewala had gone from a small-town kid to one of India's biggest music stars. He'd found fame and fortune through his talent, but interestingly, he wanted to do much more with this gift than just getting rich and famous. Sidhu would explain in an interview that he ultimately decided to get into politics to improve the circumstances in the village he came from, launching a bid to become the head of his village so that he could better direct the money spent on developing his community. Explaining that now he's rich, he would love to pay to feed everyone in his village, but he needs to do things in the official way to make true lasting change.
That is why we decided to contest in the elections to be ahead of the village. Now we can do the work, but we are still limited. Whenever we have to pitch in personally, we are doing it. Now our gym is very important for the community.
People say there are other big villages in different districts.
Some say Sidhu only cares for his own village.
You know, we used to think we would be able to do it all, but whenever you need to get a bill passed, it needs to go to the ADC, then to the MLA, and then whoever else after that. That's the issue.
Can't you spend it out of your own pocket?
How much can I pay from my own pocket?
People say Sidhu has a lot of money.
Tell me the amount that I should spend. If you say give 4 million rupees and everyone in the village will be fed, I will do it.
You left Canada and come back to the village because you love it so much. Is there something you're planning to do for the village?
Brother, I am already doing it. You know how people act when they come back from abroad. I am taking ownership of my responsibility and will continue to do so, whether we get the village leadership or not.
So you would always keep working towards the development of your village?
Yes, always.
Yes, Sidhu had become famous recording music in Canada, but he wanted to come back to his humble village of Musa to try and make things better. And while it would be a few years before Sidhu would really immerse himself into politics, his political career started when he began campaigning on behalf of his mother, Charan Kaur, who was contesting for the post of Sarpanch, or president, at Musa village in the Mansa district. Sidhu would use his fame and notoriety to bring out fans and spread word of the campaign for his mother, and Sidhu was praised for attending the local campaigns regardless of his superstar reputation. He was credited by the Indian News for wearing his casual attire and remaining humble when supporting his mother, and the village would praise Sidhu for being humble enough to join them in person despite being a megastar at this point. Sidhu had shared the proposals for his mother's candidacy, including her plans to improve Musa with improvements to drinking water and sewerage in the village, and the family also agreed to take a harsh stance on the distribution of drugs within the local area, as in recent years, Punjab has been suffering for an opium epidemic which has resulted in many farms being ruined and families being subject to severe poverty, with stories of boys as young as 12 years old pushing drugs in the streets of the Punjab. And there's no lack of supply, as these drugs are mostly imported from Afghanistan, fresh from the source and extremely pure. Now this issue has become alarming, with the United Nations even commenting on how bad the situation's got. The problem is so rife that even pharmacies are allegedly dishing out opiates quicker than the dealers, with many not even requiring a prescription. And it's been said that the government and or the police may even be playing a part in spreading opium in the community, sometimes referred to there as FEAM. And there'd been minimal efforts to tackle the problem and aid the region, despite the formation of an anti-drugs task force and rehabilitation centres. But the issue has become so normalised that some Punjabi politicians are even calling for the legalisation of opium, claiming that it's actually part of the culture. Sidhu and his family felt very strongly about overcoming the opium epidemic, and in one interview, Sidhu also shares this as the reason that he never promotes drugs or alcohol within his music. Sidhu understood his influence over the youth, and he didn't want to make getting wasted look cool. And this could well have been a subtle dig at Karan Aujla, who famously was part of a series of songs all about getting wasted, with a music video filmed in a liquor store called Alcohol. Now Sidhu also shared his plans to star and produce in Punjabi movies with positive messages to the youth, and in just 2 years of being an entertainer, Sidhu had his eyes on the top. He had already cemented himself as a star in music, he was now getting his feet wet in politics, and even planning to take on the film industry. And forget about being the Indian Tupac, Sidhu was now trying to become the Desi Arnold Schwarzenegger. This campaign turned out to be a success, and Sidhu's mother would actually win the election, beating her rival by 600 votes, and indeed becoming the president of the village. And this shows the influence and power that Sidhu Moosewala's family now had over the local area. Even in the West, a female politician winning an election can sometimes sometimes be seen as a sign of progressive success, but in Punjab, this woman winning the election was a huge deal, and not everyone would be happy about it. During this time, news of Sidhu's success and brash style had become making the rounds internationally, with many media outlets voicing their negative opinions on Sidhu, showcasing guns and violence in his music videos and lyrics, with some journalists even calling out Sidhu and the other rising Indian rappers as fake gangsters, questioning their street credibility and suggesting they'd never even touched guns, with this Canadian news outlet bashing South Asian artists for rocking the gangster image. However, local statistics kind of paint a different story, suggesting that in fact South Asian gangs in Canada are in fact incredibly deadly, responsible for a third of the violence in British Columbia. Canada in fact has a very deep and dark history with Canadian Punjabi gangs. For example, the notorious kingpin Bindi Johal and the several murders that he had allegedly committed and was connected to. He would often appear in news interviews and walk around freely, with his gang empire described by one outlet as something like a startup that scaled too fast. He was responsible for creating the Punjabi Mafia, who terrorized the streets of Vancouver in Canada through the 90s. His crew became infamous in the streets, and Bindi himself became so famous that he was actively being followed by news teams for updates on his murder cases.
Are you worried about your safety in India?
I never worry about my safety. My safety is no problem.
And what about the shootings last night?
Just move the camera, you might have to worry about your safety.
Hey, get that thing out of his face or I'll rip it right off your head. I don't give a okay? Get that thing.
He would go viral before being viral was even a thing, telling news reporters that the streets need to be scared because he's still around.
These guys to know you got another thing coming. I'm still around.
Unfortunately, he's no longer around. And just like every other high-profile crime boss, eventually things would come crashing down, as Bindi Johal was eventually gunned down in a nightclub in 1999. Perhaps due to these past issues with violent gangs, the Canadian media would prefer to keep any violent influence off the streets, and that included Sidhu Moosewala's raps about shooting ops and toting guns. But at this point, he was just getting started, and after a wild 2018, having reached the top of the Punjabi music scene and going toe-to-toe with another rising Indian rap star, releasing a classic album, and then using his fame to launch his mother into political power into his village, moving into 2019, Sidhu would keep that momentum going and set brave new levels for his music career. But the problem was, as he got more and more famous, he got more and more controversial, and his music would get increasingly violent with more and more lyrics about firearms. Combining that with his Sikh principles, warrior mentality, and lyrics calling upon the next generation of youth to rise up, the increasingly political Sidhu Moosewala might just become a problem for those who were really in charge. After going toe-to-toe with fellow Punjabi rap star Karan Aujla, Sidhu Moosewala released his classic debut album PBX1. The project spawned three main singles: Jat Da Muqabala, which came out soon after the album, that had a hook essentially calling out his competition and sneak dissing Karan Aujla. It would also have violent lyrics where he began to hint deeper at his street activity, rapping that he could be found at crime scenes and saying that he doesn't drink alcohol but he does play with guns. And he would rap about how big stars are scared of him since he came in the industry and how his ops run from him, as well as saying that his ops get jealous when they see him driving his G-Wagon, and ending the video with a message saying jealousy and success don't go together. Now, this song is an absolute banger. I've had this one on repeat since I found it. I just love the way that the beat and the melody kind of flow with his lyrics. It sort of reminds me of like a Punjabi version of French Montana's Shot Caller. Go and give it a listen. But anyway, on the track, Sidhu was sending boastful messages to his enemies, and the theme of playing gangster on the mic would continue into his next single titled Bad Fella, another certified hit that has 145 million views to date. This was another American-inspired beat where a lowrider is seen crawling through the city. But despite the influence from American gangster rap, the song itself would actually pay homage to the Canadian gangsters in Brampton, as Sidhu raps through the hook about having foreign gangsters all around him when he chills in the gang-related blocks of Brampton. And Sidhu rapped about having guns on him, shooting up trap houses, all while seemingly holding a police officer hostage. And he goes on to disrespect the police extensively on the track, rapping about how the police are following him and his crew and promising to destroy anyone in his way, saying that he can get to anybody and that his enemies are expensive, all while holding a rifle and saying that he will kill his enemies, and saying that he solves his problems with bullets. Now, this is also one of the first songs where Sidhu would actually begin his habit of speaking about his own death, as he raps that he knows he won't live long. Perhaps he didn't know it yet, but Sidhu would go on to refer to his own death frequently, and arguably spoke it into existence in his music. Now, Bad Fellas was one of his most violent songs so far, and not everyone was feeling it. Soon after the video released, an NYPD officer of Punjabi heritage would release a video criticizing Sidhu for his violent lyrics and visuals, and for not respecting the police in the video, particularly the scene where he cuffs a police officer and has him slumped on his knees.
Good morning, everyone. I have seen the video to Moosewala's new song Bad Fella. The song is very good, dude. The song is well written. The song is very good. But in the video, the guy made a little mistake. Dude, show me a policeman in this world who sits with his knees bent in front of you and bows his head. You talk like you know. We also support you. When the profession of others is not seen as low for praising your profession. How they get these jobs, you don't know. People work day and night to get these jobs. but they're still your fans. But come here whenever where the police is behind you. If they run you over, then I will leave my job.
Now, Sidhu would actually respond to these comments saying that it's just entertainment like a movie, that in the video he's just playing a character, going on to say that he thinks that they're just mad because it's him.
If there was anyone else that was doing it, shooting the police, it would be fine. When it's Sidhu Moosewala harming the police, it's seen as bad. If it was a part in a film, an actor there is villains and heroes. Everyone has a moving part.
Perhaps the controversy caused Sidhu to change his ways, at least momentarily, as his next release would be the January 2019 track I'm Better Now, this time opting to tone down the violence, releasing a much more female-focused love song. This is a breakup song essentially told from a female perspective. Interestingly, this song was kind of a moderate success to Sidhu's standards, garnering over 55 million views to date. Good numbers for any artist, but Sidhu's somebody that can put up hundreds of millions of views on the right song. But from this run of singles, Bad Fella, the most violent of the tracks released so far, was the biggest success. Clearly, fans wanted the violent gangster rap from Sidhu Moosewala, and he would continue giving them what they wanted. In February 2019, Sidhu would release again, and it would end up being another huge hit, this time choosing producers who created a much more digestible sound for the Western countries, similar to his second hit single, So High. On the 26th of February 2019, Sidhu released possibly his best single to date, the track Legend, produced by The Kid, and the song features a West Coast style beat, continuing to lean into Sidhu's influence from Tupac and the G-Funk music style from California, but this song has almost 250 million views, and it was the first official release that Sidhu chose to put out on his own channel rather than on the giant label T-Series' platform. And the song itself would apparently be released independently, meaning that financially Sidhu would be having a lot more to gain from his music from here on out. The song itself was once again concerned with his beefs and conflicts, and Sidhu opens the song saying that he has conflicts with countless people, followed by him once again eerily foreshadowing an early death, rapping that he knows his breaths are very limited, and going on to rap that even at such a young age, he's already considered a legend at this point at just age 25. And on the track, there would be plenty of gun talk too, with Sidhu boasting that he has a licensed firearm, even referring to the gun as his girlfriend. And in the next verse, Sidhu takes further shots at Karen Aujla, addressing the social media shots that were fired at him, saying that in real life they would not touch a hair on his head. He then references an interview where Aujla praised Sidhu's musical talent, claiming that silently Aujla is a fan. Sidhu then again mentions how his time here is limited, creepily somehow knowing at this point that his life was indeed in its last moments, and how his photo will be spread with breaking news as if Sidhu already knew what would happen after his eventual fate. The bridge of the song then samples a Notorious B.I.G. verse, again showing Sidhu's influence from that 90s golden age of hip-hop. Sidhu would then enter the third verse mentioning how his lyrics will live forever and how one of his songs is equal to a dozen of his competitors. During this time, Sidhu was really starting to break into the mainstream, becoming a titan in the Punjabi music industry. And even though he only had one full-length project to his name at this point, the number of views and streams on his singles cemented these as generational hits in India. Just like the song said, he was now a legend of the game at only 25, and he would continue this once-of-a-lifetime run, releasing hit after hit. Next was the love song Chosen, which now sits over 80 million views, followed by another street track called Outlaw that today sits over 58 million views. And Outlaw portrayed Sidhu like a real mob boss, calling his ops and telling them the exact time that he would be having them killed, and saying that he could have anyone kidnapped at any time. And the video featured a whole bunch of high-powered weapons, with Sidhu throwing the rifle to his hitters and taking out an op personally. And in the lyrics, Sidhu is claiming to have a large group of shooters and saying that you can't ever kill his whole gang, and that messing with his crew will lead to your certain death. He raps that his gang is out all night doing crimes, and they wear their accusations like medals, and that the things they have to do in the streets get the government talking. A bold and interesting lyric, considering there had already been outcry about violent lyrics and promoting firearms against Sidhu and other Punjabi artists all through 2018 and 19. Anyway, on the track, Sidhu would also once again meditate on his own impending death, rapping that any moment could be their last. In April, he would drop his next track, Eastside Flow, which now sits over 158 million views. And this was another American-themed track with a video decked out in lowriders and of course Sidhu's beloved Mercedes G-Wagon. At one point, he even hid a headline in the video, which was a Times of India article discussing Punjabi on Punjabi violence in Brampton in Canada. Now, this was an article that reported on apparent violent clashes between Punjabi groups on a Brampton college campus, amid suggestions that Indian gangsters were moving to Canada under the guise of studying, but then getting in the streets. Elsewhere in the Eastside Flow video, Sidhu would also show a thumbnail from a YouTube channel called Severa Star Talks, who had dropped a video about him. Now, this YouTube channel actually reports extensively on the Punjabi rap scene, has made dozens of videos about Sidhu, regularly keeping track of any times the police have spoken out against him or any times that he clapped back, as well as having interviewed him personally at his home, where in one clip he actually asked Sidhu about the rising prominence of firearms in Punjabi culture, with Sidhu explaining that the wider culture dictates what everybody wears, eats and does, explaining that there's a time for everything, I guess including guns. He would also point out that there were times in the 80s and 90s where people got very active in the streets, suggesting that this is more to do with what's happening in wider society rather than the musicians making everyone violent with their songs.
Controversy has arisen and caused discussions. Some came from South India and claim that people want to start speaking Punjabi because in the Punjabi songs they are talking about guns, and since then there has been an increase in crime and drugs. What does Sidhu Moosewala think of this?
First of all, we ask those who talk about culture, what is the definition of culture? What is culture? What kind of clothes someone wear? It changes in time. The way a person eats, behaves, the culture that a person has in the surrounding environment. That's the culture. The 80s and 90s were the time when there was a talk of getting up and burning. Expensive cars were not available then. It used to be a matter of getting up and going. And when there was such atmosphere, you talk with that calculation.
But anyway, despite the controversy surrounding his violent lyrics, Sidhu continued leaning into his gangster persona. His next song was titled Mafia Style and today sits over 60 million views, despite not even having a music video. And the song had an interesting concept where Sidhu rapped that when he has his wedding, it has to be mafia style, with a convoy of G-Wagons, guns in his jacket, and both British pounds and American dollars being thrown into the sky. But while Sidhu's gangster reputation had the whole of India talking, his street persona would ultimately begin to cause him problems with his career. He was blocked from performing in British Columbia, Canada, due to the police having concerns of violence popping off at the show. Unable to perform in summer 2019, Sidhu would get back in the studio and continued making hits, and his next anthem would come in August 2019 when he released the song Same Beef with Bohemia and Big Bird. And the track didn't disappoint fans who had grown to love Sidhu's tough as nails gangbanging lyrics. In Same Beef, Sidhu would rap about catching cases, gaining more ops, and being a shooter, and still beefing with the same people from his past, despite his newfound fame and success. He would even claim in one ominous bar that he still rides around in the same car and that he's not hiding from anyone. Sidhu also prophetically mentions how the bullet is his beginning and end, as well as saying that Toronto is still his hood. Big Bird then possibly sends some more shots at Karan Aujla, claiming that boys have become rich by copying him. And Sidhu later continues to flex his weaponry, claiming to have more weapons than friends, which is essential for his enemies. The track was clearly a shot at his ops, and Sidhu was doubling down on the violent themes that were attracting him attention, both good and bad, and the formula was working. This song was a huge hit today and sits over 500 million views. While Sidhu was capable of making love songs, it was those tough gangster rap bangers that really got him the numbers. But the following month, Sidhu experienced one of his first brushes of controversy beyond his violent lyrics, when he released